There's a specific sound a locker makes when someone slams your head against it without really meaning to slam your head against it. It's not a horror movie sound. It's duller than that, more like a car door. I know that sound better than I know most people's voices because for 2 years it was basically Colton Ray's saying good morning to me. I want to start there with the sound because everyone always wants the story to start with a look or a feeling or some slow motion moment where you just know. It didn't start like that. It started with a headache and a kid named Marcus filming it on his phone for a Snapchat story that got maybe 40 views. My name's Theo. I was 17 that year, a senior at a school in Ohio with about 600 kids in it, in a town where the biggest employer was a distribution warehouse off the highway and the second biggest was the school district itself. I drew a lot. I kept my head down. I had two real friends, Priya and a kid named Ben who moved away sophomore year, and we still texted sometimes, which is its own small grief nobody talks about. Colton Ray's was the kind of bully that doesn't really have a reason. That's what made it worse, honestly. If he'd hated me for something specific, I think I could have made peace with it faster. Instead, it was just weather. Some days nothing. Some days he'd knock my sketchbook out of my hands in the hallway and not even look back to see it hit the ground. Some days are worse than that. I'm not going to make him a monster in this story because he wasn't one, and also because that's not actually what happened to me, so it wouldn't be honest. But I need you to understand what those 2 years felt like before I tell you about the hallway, because otherwise the 3 words don't mean anything. They happened on a Thursday. I remember it was a Thursday because Thursdays were the days I stayed late for art club, and art club had been canceled that week because Ms. Acaffer had a dentist appointment, and I hadn't checked my phone, so I was the only kid left in that whole wing of the building except for the janitor running a floor buffer somewhere I couldn't see. I was getting my jacket out of my locker. The hallway was that particular kind of empty that makes a school feel like a different building entirely. The lights buzzing, the trophy case throwing back a warped reflection of me, nobody's voice anywhere. And then there was a voice, his voice. Hey. I didn't turn around right away. There's a specific flinch your body learns after enough times where you go still first and brave second. I turned around eventually, jacket half on, one arm still stuck in the sleeve, and Colton Ray's was standing about 10 feet away with his backpack over one shoulder, looking at me like he was trying to solve a math problem he'd already given up on twice. I remember thinking, okay, whatever this is, let's get it over with. He didn't come closer. That was the first strange thing. Usually there was a closing of distance, some kind of physical claim on the space around me. This time he just stood there and the floor buffer hummed somewhere far off and he said 3 words. This isn't hate. That's it, that's the whole sentence. No explanation before it, none after it. He didn't say hate what? He didn't say I don't hate you, which would have at least made grammatical sense as an apology. He said this isn't hate like he was answering a question I hadn't asked, and then he turned around and walked out through the side doors, and I stood there with one arm still in my jacket sleeve like an idiot, staring at a hallway that had gone back to being empty and ordinary like nothing had happened in it. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, because I genuinely could not figure out what sentence I was supposed to build around those 3 words. This isn't hate. Then what is it? What's the noun? What's the rest of it? I told Priya the next morning at her locker, and she made a face like I'd told her the sky had briefly turned green. He said what? This isn't hate. That's okay, that's not a normal thing to say. Normal is sorry or leave me alone or literally nothing, which is what he usually does. That's not Theo, that's a weird sentence. I know it's a weird sentence. Do you think he's messing with you, like a new kind of messing with you? I didn't have an answer for that, and for about a week and a half life went back to exactly what it had been before, which almost made me believe her. Colton ignored me in the hallway the way he'd started to ignore me sometime around October, not out of kindness, just because his attention had drifted to other targets, other jokes, other people's lives to make smaller. I told myself I'd imagine the weight of that sentence. Maybe he'd been talking about something else entirely, some private joke with himself, and I just happened to be standing there. Then something happened to my bike. I used to lock my bike at the rack behind the gym, because the one out front was always full, and honestly I liked the walk around the building. It was quiet back there, nobody really used it except kids who smoked between classes and didn't want to get caught. One day in early November I came out to get it and somebody had let all the air out of both tires. Not slash them, just let the air out, which if you think about it is a strange kind of cruelty, because it's completely invisible unless you're the one it happens to, and completely useless as a joke unless you watch the person discover it. I was crouched there trying to figure out how I was going to walk 2 miles home in the cold when I heard footsteps behind me, and I braced for it, the way you do. It was Colton. He had a hand pump, an actual bike hand pump, the kind you keep in a garage. He didn't say anything about why he had it. He just crouched down next to me, not too close. There was still a careful distance in it, like he was aware of every inch between our shoulders, and he started pumping air into my front tire without asking if I wanted help. "I didn't do this," he said, not looking at me, focused on the tire. "Okay. I mean it, I know how it looks, I didn't do it." "Okay," I said again because I genuinely didn't know what else to say. My whole body was doing this strange, low-grade vibrating thing like static, like I'd touched something with a small electric current running through it. He finished the front tire and moved to the back one without a word, and the whole time the only sound was the little rhythmic hiss of the pump and some sophomore's car alarm going off in the parking lot for no reason. When he was done, he stood up, wiped his palms on his jeans, and looked at me for a second too long. "You're welcome," he said, which came out clipped, almost annoyed, like he hadn't meant to say it out loud, and then he walked off toward the front of the school without waiting for me to say thank you. Which was good because I don't think I could have gotten the words out anyway. I rode home that day going about 11 miles an hour slower than usual, turning the whole thing over and over. This isn't hate. A hand pump, 10 feet of careful distance. None of it made sense as a pattern yet. "I want to be honest with you," some small ugly voice in my head kept saying. "Don't be an idiot. This is a setup. Guys like that don't just stop." And I listened to that voice for a long time because it had kept me safe for 2 years, and I didn't know how to turn it off just because of one strange sentence and one afternoon with a bike pump. Things got stranger before they got clearer. That's the part people don't believe when I tell this story, that it didn't move in a straight line, that it wasn't some clean unfolding where every day got a little softer than the last. Some days he was exactly the same as he'd always been, sharp-edged, dismissive, laughing at something one of his friends said about me like I wasn't standing right there. And then some other day, alone when nobody else could see, he'd do something small and strange and quiet, like leaving my sketchbook on the bleachers where I'd dropped it instead of stepping over it, or telling a kid named Dax to cut it out, man, it's not funny, in a voice that had an edge I didn't recognize, one that wasn't performing for an audience. I started to understand, slowly, painfully, like working out a rusted screw, that there were two versions of him and they weren't taking turns randomly. The version other people saw was armor. The version I started seeing in 5-second windows when nobody else was around was something else entirely, and I didn't have language yet for what that something else was. The thing that actually cracked it open happened in December, at a party I didn't even want to go to. Priya dragged me to this thing at a girl named Sasha's house. Some pre-winter break thing with too many people crammed into a basement that smelled like carpet cleaner and somebody's dad's cologne. I was standing near the drinks table not drinking anything, doing my usual thing of being present at a party without actually attending it, when I heard Colton's voice from the hallway outside the bathroom, low, tight, arguing with someone on the phone. I shouldn't have listened, I know that, but there was something in his tone that stopped me, not anger exactly, something closer to fear wearing anger's clothes. "I don't care what you think you saw," he was saying. "There's nothing to see, drop it." A pause. "Dad, I swear to God, drop it." I backed away before he came out, my heart doing something complicated in my chest, because I had heard that specific tone before in my own house, in my own voice, on nights when I still hadn't figured out how to be honest with my parents about who I was. It's a very particular sound, a person defending a locked door. I didn't say anything to him that night. I didn't get the chance. He left the party not long after alone, walking out the front door with his hood up even though it wasn't that cold, and something about the set of his shoulders made me want to follow him, which was such an insane impulse given our entire history that I actually laughed at myself a little, standing there in Sasha's kitchen laughing at nothing, while Priya asked me what was funny and I said nothing. "I'm fine, let's just go home." It was 2 days later that he actually talked to me, really talked, for the first time since the hallway. I was in the art room after school. Ms. Ackhaffer let me use it during her free period sometimes since I didn't have a great setup at home, and I heard the door open and assumed it was her coming back from the copier. It wasn't. It was Colton standing in the doorway with his hands jammed in his jacket pockets, looking like he'd talked himself into walking over here and was already regretting it by the time he arrived. "Can I sit?" he said, not really a question, more like a sentence he needed permission to finish. "It's a free country," I said, which is a stupid thing to say, but I panic, quote my dad sometimes when I don't know what else to do with my mouth. He sat 2 stools down from me at the long table not next to me, and he watched me shade in the corner of a drawing I'd been avoiding finishing for 2 weeks. A hallway, actually, though I didn't tell him that, an empty one done mostly in blues and grays. "I heard you," he said finally, "at the party in the hallway." My stomach dropped in that specific whole-body way. I wasn't trying to. "I know you weren't trying to. I saw your face when I came out of the bathroom. You looked like you'd seen a ghost, not like you'd been eavesdropping on purpose." He picked up one of my pencils and turned it over in his hands, not drawing anything, just needing somewhere to put his eyes that wasn't me. "My dad thinks he saw something on my phone, a conversation." I didn't ask what kind of conversation. I think some part of me already knew, the way you know a storm is close by the particular color the sky goes even before the thunder. "He didn't actually see anything," Colton said. "Not really. He saw a name and jumped to something, and I let him think he was wrong because it was easier than." He stopped. Set the pencil down very precisely, lining it up with the edge of the table like it mattered. "You know what my dad's like. You've probably heard the stuff people say about him. Half of it's true." I did know, actually. Everyone in town knew Colton's dad ran the hardware store on Fifth and had opinions he shared loudly at the counter. Opinions that made my own dad go quiet and change the subject whenever his name came up at dinner. So the whole, I gestured vaguely, meaning the shoving, the ignoring, 2 years of being made smaller in hallways. That was me being a coward," he said, and it came out fast, almost angry, but not at me. "That was me making sure nobody looked at me too close by making sure everybody looked at you instead. I picked you because you were quiet and you never fought back, and it was." He rubbed a hand over his face. "It was disgusting. I know it was disgusting. I'm not asking you to forgive it. I just needed you to know it wasn't about you. It was never about you. It was about me being terrified of my own house." The art room was very quiet. Somewhere down the hall a door closed. I remember staring at the drawing in front of me, the gray hallway, and thinking that I'd drawn it without even realizing I was drawing the exact hallway where this had all started, and that felt like too strange a coincidence to say out loud, so I didn't. "Why the hallway?" I said instead. "In November, why say that to me at all if you were just going to keep pretending after?" He was quiet for a long moment, because I couldn't keep doing it and not say anything. I don't know, it was stupid. "I practiced this whole speech in my head for like a week, and then I saw you standing there and all that came out was 3 words, and then I panicked and left." A short, humorless laugh. "Real smooth." "It wasn't smooth," I agreed. "I thought about it for like 10 days straight." "Yes. Yeah." Something shifted in his face when I said that, not a smile exactly, something more careful than a smile, like he was checking to see if it was safe to feel something before he let himself feel it. "I want to tell you that everything got easy after that conversation, but that's not how any of this actually works, and I promised myself I'd tell it the way it happened, not the way it would look good on camera." What happened instead was 2 more months of something slow and complicated and occasionally excruciating. Colton couldn't just switch off 2 years of performance overnight, and I couldn't just switch off 2 years of flinching. We started sitting together sometimes at lunch, at first at the very edge of the cafeteria where nobody would notice, and his friends noticed anyway, and there were a few ugly comments, a few, "Since when do you hang out with him?" moments that made his jaw tighten in a way I was starting to learn meant he was holding something back. There was a night in January I don't think I'll ever fully explain right, because some things don't translate well into words, they just live in your body afterward. We were at the reservoir outside town, the one everybody goes to park at even though it's technically closed after dark, sitting on the hood of his car with a six-pack he'd bought with a fake ID that fooled absolutely nobody at the gas station, but that the guy sold to him anyway because it was a slow Tuesday. We weren't talking about anything important. Some show we both half-watched, a teacher we both couldn't stand, dumb stuff. And then there was one of those silences that isn't actually empty, it's just full of something nobody said yet, and he looked over at me with an expression I hadn't seen on him before, not guarded, not performing, just open, almost scared in how open it was. "Can I tell you something and you don't make it weird?" he said. "I make everything weird, it's my whole personality." "I'm serious, Theo." "Okay, sorry, yeah, go." He looked down at the bottle in his hands, picking at the label with his thumbnail. "I think about you a lot more than a person should think about someone they used to shove into lockers." I didn't say anything right away because my heart had relocated somewhere up near my throat and I wasn't sure I could get a full sentence past it. I started and stopped and tried again. "That's a really specific way to say something." I know, I've been trying to figure out how to say it less weird for like 3 weeks, and this is what I came up with, so. It's not weird, I said, it's a lot. 2 months ago, you were still the person who scared me the most in that entire school. His face did something complicated, guilt and hope arguing with each other in real time. I know, and if you want to just be nothing, if you want me to back off, I'll actually do it this time, I won't be weird about it. I didn't say that, I said, before I'd fully decided to say it. I said it's a lot, those aren't the same sentence. We sat there a while longer, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching, not quite, that careful distance he always kept, like he was scared of taking up space he hadn't earned yet. Eventually, and I don't even remember which of us moved first, that's the honest truth, memory doesn't always hand you the clean version, our hands ended up next to each other on the hood of the car, and then not next to each other anymore. We didn't kiss that night. I know that's probably not what you're expecting to hear, given everything, but it felt too big for that night, like the air couldn't hold it yet. We just sat there holding hands in the dark by a reservoir that was technically closed, two boys who 2 months earlier had barely been able to look at each other, and it was somehow more overwhelming than any kiss could have been. I need to tell you about the bad part now because there was a bad part, and skipping it would make this a different, less true story. His dad found out in February. Not from us, from a kid named Dax, ironically the same one Colton used to tell to cut it out, who saw us at a diner 2 towns over on a night we thought we were being careful, and who apparently couldn't wait to be the one holding that information. I don't know everything that happened in that house that night. Colton's never told me the full version, and I've never pushed, because some things belong to a person and not to a story, even this one. What I know is he showed up at my window a little after 11 with a duffel bag and a face that looked like it had aged 5 years since lunch. My mom found him on our porch steps at 11:30, and to her enormous credit, she didn't ask a single question that night. She made him a grilled cheese, put a blanket on the couch, and told him he could stay as long as he needed, and it wasn't until the next morning that I found out my parents had already known who I was for over a year and had just been quietly waiting for me to be ready to tell them myself. Colton stayed with us for 11 days. His mom eventually came and got him. She and his dad were separated by then anyway, something that had apparently been building for a long time under the surface of that house, and things settled slowly into something calmer, though calmer isn't the same as easy. He didn't talk to his dad again for the rest of that school year. I know that cost him something I can't fully measure even now. What I remember most from those 11 days isn't the crisis of it. It's the ordinary stuff underneath the crisis. Him doing homework at my kitchen table with my mom's cat asleep on his feet. Him teaching my little cousin how to do a card trick he half remembered from a summer camp years ago. The two of us doing dishes together on the fourth night, not talking about anything important, just existing in the same small kitchen with the water running, and him bumping his shoulder into mine on purpose, gently like a question, and me bumping back like an answer. We told people slowly, at our own pace, not for a video, not for an audience, just for us. Priya cried a little, which surprised both of us, and then admitted she'd suspected something back in December and had been waiting for me to say it out loud instead of pushing. A few kids at school were unkind about it in the specific low, cowardly way kids are unkind when they think nobody important is watching. Most people honestly didn't care as much as I'd spent 2 years being afraid they would. Graduation came faster than either of us expected. I remember standing in the parking lot afterward. Both of us still in our gowns, the sun doing that low golden thing it does in early June, and Colton looking at me with an expression I finally had a name for by then because I'd had 6 months to learn it. "Remember that hallway?" he said. "Which one? You've apologized for like 4 different hallways at this point." The first one." "I remember. I practiced an entire speech," he said. "I had it all planned out, and then I saw you and I panicked and all I could get out was 3 words. "This isn't hate," I said. "Yeah. You know that's a genuinely terrible thing to say to someone with zero context. I thought about it for like 2 weeks. I know, I'm sorry, I was 17 and terrified and it was the truest sentence I had. I think about that a lot actually, more than almost anything else from that whole year. Not the bike pump, not the party, not even the night at the reservoir. Just 3 words in an empty hallway, spoken by someone who didn't yet have the rest of the sentence figured out, and how much time and pain it took both of us to build the rest of it together, one imperfect piece at a time. We're not 17 anymore. I'm not going to pretend this story ends in some fairy tale where nothing ever gets hard again, because that wouldn't be true either, and I promised you the true version. We've had fights. We've had a year apart in different states for school that nearly broke us and somehow didn't. His relationship with his dad is still mostly a closed door, though not entirely, not anymore. There was a phone call last winter neither of us expected, short and awkward and imperfect, but a start. What I know now, years past that empty hallway, past the buzzing lights and the trophy case throwing back its warped reflection, is that sometimes the person who hurts you the most is also, somehow impossibly, carrying something you can't see. And that doesn't erase what they did to you, it never erases that, but it can, if you both do the work, if you're both brave enough and patient enough, become the beginning of something entirely different than what it started as. 3 words, that's all it took to crack something open that had been sealed for 2 years. I still don't fully understand how that works, how so much can hinge on so little. But I know that whenever I walk down an empty hallway now, in any building, any city, some part of me still listens for footsteps behind me, half braced, half hopping. And most days now, when I hear them, they belong to him.